Welcome everyone. My name is Gabriela Alvarez. I am PPI's coordinator. Today we will talk about calendarios, in Spanish, or calendars, which reflect upon seasonal cycles as a tool to strengthen traditional foodways. We are very happy to have you all with us today and to have the opportunity to hear from Mary Stockdale, Kathy Staventon, and Belinda Contreras. This event is the third in a series of webinars exploring tools and methodologies associated with knowledge exchange, drawing upon people and plants' decades-long experience. The first webinar we held as part of this series was on Indigenous food and cultural revival festivals. In that webinar, people and plants partners shared practical advice, experiences, and lessons learned from festivals in Indonesia, Ecuador, the Philippines, and South Africa. The second webinar we held was on knowledge exchange and sharing with a focus on education. Recordings are available on our website. We invite you to check them if you weren't able to assist last time. And additional webinars will include those on manuals and booklets, recipes, exchanges and cookbooks, video production, and games. So I'll present very briefly our panelists. They'll expand on their work later. Mary Stockdale is a professor of the University of British Columbia in the Okanagan campus in Canada. Kathy Staventon from Runaway Moon Theatre is also based in Canada. And Belinda Contreras is a PPI affiliate and independent researcher based in Mexico. I will hand over now to Mary and Kathy, and then Belinda will follow. They all have a great deal to share with us from their decades of scientific research, community organizing and outreach, and development of innovative methodologies to share knowledge.
Mary and I are here to talk with you about an arts-based community research project that took place in the Secwepemc traditional territory in what is now called British Columbia, Canada, where we are fortunate to live and to work. The project was a collaboration between many people, and it's being presented today by two of us.
One is myself, Mary Stockdale. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of British Columbia's Okanagan campus, where I teach about sustainability and the environment. I've also been a longtime affiliate of the Traditional Foodways program of People and Plants International. My parents were organic farmers in this part of BC, Canada, until they retired. So I have a special interest in food and agriculture. I'm also very fascinated by traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK for short. And in this Calendario project, I was interested in a specific type of TEK that is known as local seasonal knowledge.
I'm Kathy Stubbington, and I work through Runaway Moon Theatre Arts Society, which is a nonprofit organization with two mandates. One is to create puppet theater, and the other is to create collaborations between artists and the population at large. I use the term oblique activism to describe what we do through community art projects, because the projects can draw people in and help them to engage with various topics in a way that's not confrontational or overtly political. I live on an organic farm, so as an artist, I have a particular interest in food and agriculture. I initiated this project through Runaway Moon, so I organized the community-based arts projects that got members of the public involved in collecting seasonal knowledge and sharing it with the rest of the community.
In addition to Kathy and myself, many more people were involved in this project, including artists, farmers, gardeners, naturalists, Indigenous elders, school children, and members of the general public. Here are some photos of where we live. This is a mountainous, forested region where ecosystems can change remarkably over a short distance. And they change with altitude, or they change with the direction that the slope is facing, and they change as you go up and down the north-south axis of the Okanagan Valley. And the farming in this area tends to be quite small in scale.
Our Calendario project was inspired by a group from Peru called PRATEC, the Andean Project for Peasant Technologies. One project that PRATEC supports is the Calendarios Agrofestivales y Rituales, a series of calendars developed by Indigenous communities who've feel are losing their local cultural knowledge through their children's involvement in the formal education system. So, in communities across the Andes, locally specific murals have been painted on the walls of schools depicting seasonal agricultural activities, signs in nature, and ritual celebrations that correspond to these. These calendars help the children to remember important local relevant knowledge about food production in their communities. I saw this photo on the internet and it sparked my curiosity and imagination, and I wondered what this idea of Calendarios Agrofestivales could look like in this place.
So, what is local seasonal knowledge? Over a long period of time, Indigenous and other local people around the world, whether they were farmers, fishers, pastoralists, or hunter-gatherers, have developed ways to schedule their activities based on natural signs, such as signs in the night sky, the weather, and stages of the life cycle of plants, birds, insects, and other animals. Such knowledge, local seasonal knowledge, is transferred to children as they take part in food production activities alongside their parents and grandparents, and is reinforced through a variety of cultural activities related to the seasonal round, such as local folklore, customs, and celebrations. And as you know, this type of knowledge is in danger of being lost in many places, including ours.
Our project took place in two overlapping phases. In phase 1, we gathered local knowledge about the seasonal cycle of agricultural, natural, and cultural events in the area. And phase 2, we documented and shared this knowledge through art projects that many people participated in, and eventually produced some lasting public art that depicts this knowledge.
We also had 5 aims for this project, and this is where we add in that oblique activism that Kathy mentioned earlier. So the first aim was to build connection to the place where we live, to food production, the environment, and the community. So in this globalized, industrialized, colonized part of the world, so many people are disconnected from how food is produced and from having any ability to grow or raise their own. Most people's food in this area where we live comes from the grocery store. And they're also disconnected from their own natural area, whether the landscape, the seasons, or the local plant and animal species. And they're also sometimes disconnected from the other people in their community. So by interesting people in the seasonal connections between food production, nature, and culture in their own area, we help to build a sense of connection to the place they live in.
The second aim of the project was to develop and celebrate a sense of local culture. Our population is a combination of Indigenous and settler groups. The Indigenous Secwepemc people have been here for thousands of years and have developed an extensive local seasonal knowledge about the production of food. However, there have been major changes since settlers made contact less than 200 years ago. In terms of food production, many First Peoples now are cattle ranchers or practice some other form of farming while still engaging in some traditional food harvesting activities. From the point of view of settlers, such as Mary and myself, the history is relatively recent. Settlers have introduced farming practices, bringing along domestic plants and animals species specific for food production. However, some settlers have adapted to living here, adding to their diet through hunting, fishing, and berry picking. Part of the connection to place that Mary mentioned earlier comes from those of us who live in the Secwepemc territory at this time, both Indigenous and settler, developing and celebrating our own local food production cultures, with a shared area between the two. We hope with this and other projects to support the respectful sharing of knowledge between Indigenous and settler people.
The third aim is to share local seasonal knowledge that could potentially be useful. So, for example, there's a berry bush here called the Saskatoon. And an old timer of the area told us that when the Saskatoon is in flower, it's time to plant potatoes. So this might be because the flowering of a wild plant, like the Saskatoon, could be started by a certain environmental condition, like maybe a certain temperature or amount of daylight or soil moisture. And this same environmental condition might also be favorable for the planting of potatoes. So these signs, therefore, might be more reliable than calendar dates. These days, farmers, gardeners, and others tend to time their food production activities by calendar dates. However, with climate change, where spring may come early one year and late the next, natural signs may well be a more accurate sign for initiating certain activities compared to calendar dates. The other thing is that these signs may be more reliable in mountainous areas like where we live here. Environmental conditions in gardens, farms, and wild places vary widely depending upon how high up or down the mountain they are, the direction in which the slope is facing, or how far north or south the location is along the valley. So in a place where the Saskatoon flowers early, for example, because it's lower in the valley, that might be a good indication that the potatoes can be planted early there too.
The fourth aim of the project is to raise awareness of climate change. Direct personal study of local signs in nature, particularly when looking at the timing of events like first flowering or first sighting of a bird or animal species, can help increase people's understanding of climate change because it moves people into noticing for themselves how things are changing over time.
And a final aim was to have fun, spending time with neighbors, doing stuff with our hands. So in phase 1 of our project, we all started gathering and compiling local seasonal knowledge. And we did this in a number of ways. One way was by setting up our Calendario display at music festivals, agricultural fairs, seed swaps, and other community gatherings. This display shows the various rings of the display Calendario for categories such as signs in the sky, signs in nature, agricultural activities, and cultural events. People would come by, and if they had a contribution to make, we added it as a sticky note to the giant display. And we found that people were often unable to contribute much knowledge, but were very interested in learning. So another way to gather knowledge that we found to be very useful was to identify and interview local experts, often elders and others who have lived here a long time and who really know about nature as well as about food production in the area. And all of this collected knowledge was then gathered together to create a draft calendar of local seasonal indicators. This linear calendario has gone up in the kitchens of volunteers who've been checking it for accuracy over the years. So some of our favorite sayings, I'm going to read out a few of our favorite sayings on this calendar. One of them on this slide here is the beginning here. So it says, when the chickadee bird's song changes from chickadee-dee-dee-dee to hey, sweetie, it means it's time to prune the raspberry canes and the fruit trees. And another one is, when the dogwood bush reaches peak bloom, it's time to plant tomatoes and early corn. And another one is, when you hear the crickets chirping, that means the salmon are coming back up the river. And finally, when it's the full moon in October, it's time to plant garlic. And here at the end of our long linear calendario, you can see a cycle of local cultural events that are based on the seasonal production of food. And they include quite local events like the Splatcheen Indigenous communities' winter feast, Enderby Garlic Festival, and the Kingfisher Salmon Egg Take. People are often surprised to realize how many cultural events there are in our community based around food production.
In phase 2, we held a series of community-based art projects in which people of all ages participated in searching for, learning about, and sharing local seasonal knowledge. We offered a variety of artist-led workshops in several communities as well as programs in schools. This artistic approach supported a learning process for a wide range of community members with opportunities for exchange between cultures and generations. Now I'm going to show you a sample of the many art projects that we initiated. One type of project was based on the linear seasonal indicator calendar that Mary described earlier. These sayings ended up being depicted on things like my friend's Teresa's skirts. See, this is an important flower that's actually the root of it is a food plant, is a food. And she has it in 2 seasons here. And here we made a set of t-shirts with the seasonal indicators on them. So here, this one, when wild roses bloom, it's safe to plant carrots. Some children worked with an artist named Deb Humphreys to make these useful dishcloths. So this one says, when arnica blooms, the ground is warm enough to plant brassicas. Another way seasonal knowledge has been gathered is by asking about the order in which certain food-related animals or plants appear over the seasons, which we call the order of series, like the order of flowers or the order of the arrival of fish. Another set of art projects were based on the seasonal order of flowers for honeybees. First, a local group of beekeepers met to discuss the order of the flowers that the bees go to for pollen and nectar. It's amazing how there's always the right kind of flower to provide what the bee needs at every time of year. My friend Marianne embroidered this skirt with the bee flowers. So as you go around the skirt, you can see the flowers in the order in which they bloom. There's 12 of them. And from this information, we made a little flower jingle, or kind of like a song. And this is how it goes. It goes, pussy willow, dandelion, apple, saskatoon, acacia, mustard, yellow sweet clover, snowberry, white clover, alfalfa, fall, asters, goldenrod. So we taught that too. This slide shows children in bee costume chanting the flower jingle and learning the waggle dance, which is what bees do to let other bees know about the location of the flowers that are ready. And another class of children worked on a set of posters. Each poster talked about one of the 12 bee flowers, and we put these posters up around town at the time when each of the flowers was in bloom. So the order of the fish, another project that was done with the Splatchin Indigenous community, was about the order of the fish as they arrive. This project involved making strings of flags depicting 7 fall fish and 7 spring fish. See, they're all in an order. And we also printed the Indigenous name for the fish on the flags. So all ages of people, about 40 people of all ages helped to make these flags with an artist named Tanya Willard. And elder Rosalind Williams has made a children's song about the order of the arrival of the fish with their names in the Indigenous language. She's also made a play about this. We also made some fabric models of the fish. Here's one of the elders who knows exactly what these fish look like. And here's the result. So we also gathered knowledge of the seasonal cycle for specific categories of food production, which we call the cycle series. One project was about the seasonal cycle of farming from the sheep's point of view. We worked with a sheep farmer named Gabrielle, and children made a giant wool felt rug depicting the cycle of sheep farming activities. Here's the children trying to figuring out where the information should go, and there's the rug itself. So the rug shows the changes in land. You see that how the colors change in the land and the sky over the year, as well as the different ways the sheep get their food, from the mother's milk in the spring to spring flowers to grass in the pasture in the summer and to hay in the winter. Here the children are showing off, some of the children showing off their rug, and that's Gabrielle, the farmer, in the top right corner. We used some of the wool from Gabriel's own sheep to make the rug. Then at a later workshop, other sheep farmers in the community added more information to the rug with the help of school children. Here's another rug that was done in another school in another community about the cycles of nature on the edge of a big lake where the school is. Now, the gardening tool cycle, here in the picture, you can see a kind of a calendar of the tools that farmers use, or they used to use until they got into really big, large-scale farming in order to grow vegetables such as carrots. They're organized in the order in which they're used. And at one summer camp, children learned the actions for using these tools from Doug Saba, an organic vegetable farmer. And these were made into a dance about planting carrots. So we hope to move towards making some public art pieces based on Calendario. One project was to decorate lampposts on a main street in town, each showing a bird with plants that it relies on for food and shelter. And these lampposts are arranged around the town in the order in which the birds appear in spring. Another public artwork was to create a rotating segmented wheel inspired in part by the prayer wheels that are seen in places like Tibet. People worked on paper cutout images in a public workshop, and then we arranged them in order. Here you can see, these are some of the paper images that people made. They cut out pieces of colored paper and put them together. And then the other picture was you saw there were 6 sections to it. So each one rotates, and it has images first of birds, and then bugs, and then wild plants, and then farming tools, and vegetables and fruit, and then the order of the fish. Yeah, so some of these useful items of art are in place in a public library where they were made into hassocks for sitting on. These are in the public library. So this is the first flower that the bees go to for honey and nectar. It's called the pussy willow. Here's the second flower that the bees go to. It's called dandelion. Here's number 11, fall asters. So these are really comfortable to sit on, and some children made bees that we felted on using Gabriel's sheep's wool.
So to conclude, we found that community-based art is an effective way to connect us all to place, to pass on local knowledge about the seasons in a joyful and creative way, and to raise awareness of climate change. So it truly is an oblique form of activism in that it gently encourages large numbers of people to get together and engage with issues of great importance to us all. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy and Mary. It was beautiful. It's inspiring and heartwarming, all that you do. So I'm gonna present first a video made by Belinda to introduce her talk, and then she's gonna go ahead with her presentation.
¿Has pensado en los vínculos que tienen el tiempo y el espacio? ¿O te has preguntado qué relación tienen las formas de medir el tiempo con el devenir? ¿En qué piensas cuando escuchas la palabra calendario?
Nuestra propuesta plantea que existen relaciones entre los ciclos estacionales y las tradiciones alimentarias, y aún más, entre la forma en que entendemos esos ciclos y relaciones con nuestra propia forma de pensar y de aprender. Para acercarnos de manera sencilla a la comprensión de esas realidades llenas de relaciones complejas, existe una herramienta tan versátil como potente: los calendarios.
Como toda herramienta, el potencial de los calendarios depende de los conocimientos, necesidades y creatividad de las personas que lo utilizan. Así es como, por ejemplo, un martillo puede ser tan versátil, como una llanta puede transformarse en hogar, material de construcción o columpio, o como un disco de arado se convierte en un gran sartén, para dar origen a uno de los platillos típicos en el norte de México, la discada. No hay límites.
Es necesario reconocer que la emergencia ambiental en el mundo, con sus efectos de gran magnitud y escala, como el cambio climático, están dejando en el rezago el conocimiento tradicional de sus entornos que muchas culturas han desarrollado a lo largo de su historia. Se vuelve necesario entender las relaciones. Se vuelve necesario entender lo complejo. Se vuelve necesario transitar hacia las transformaciones deseadas.
Personas reunidas en todo el mundo están utilizando los calendarios como motivos de reflexión. y cambio. El auge de la investigación y los marcos participativos. La etnobiología, las aproximaciones socioecológicas, procesos de reivindicación identitaria, experiencias de incidencia educativa comunitaria, procesos ecológicos, calendarios agrofestivos rituales, calendarios agrícolas y socioculturales.
La esencia fundamental de los calendarios como herramienta es poner todo en relación y en movimiento.
En una espiral continua entre las realidades, las culturas y las mentes.
Buenos días. Edité ese video para que fuera mi presentación de mi postura y relación con los calendarios. Eh, Mis queridas Mari y Katy pudieron profundizar bastante en una experiencia concreta de calendario. Es como un árbol con grandes raíces. Lo que yo les voy a platicar hoy es como una planta del desierto. Es una experiencia mucho más extendida con raíces también mucho más pequeñas, pero que esperamos que siga creciendo. Como ustedes pueden saber, pues estoy hablando en español porque estamos en México, ¿no? Y en México los calendarios son algo de larga data. Se tienen calendarios desde la época prehispánica en que las personas y las culturas que vivían acá tenían gran conocimiento y práctica en conmutar el tiempo y el espacio y en plasmarla en concepciones cíclicas que involucraban fundamentalmente vínculos agrofestivos. Entonces, como pueden ver, los calendarios en México no son algo nuevo, sino es algo con profundas raíces, pero que sin embargo constituye una herencia vigente, tanto en el día a día de las comunidades campesinas, pesqueras, indígenas, incluso en algunos casos en comunidades en las ciudades, y constituye también un auge en la investigación y en los marcos participativos. Eh, Queremos posicionarnos desde una postura ontológica en el porqué de los calendarios. Y para esto utilizamos las palabras de Moura. Habla de que romper el tiempo del otro implica romper también los vínculos con sus formas de entender la vida y con sus territorios. Y por lo tanto implica imponer nuevas lógicas y comprensiones. Por lo tanto, la raíz del calendario tiene una profunda convicción ontológica para nosotros. Nuestra primera experiencia con calendarios vino del cierre de un proyecto que hicimos de 2012 a 2016 y que se llamó Manejo Forestal Comunitario y Conservación en el Centro de México. Este proyecto durante todos esos años tuvo una diversidad de componentes que hacia el cierre quisimos vincular y convertir en unos talleres de educación biocultural para niños y para maestros. Entonces, teníamos un reto. Por un lado, teníamos la historia biocultural de las culturas nahuas de la Sierra de Songolica. Por otro lado, teníamos todas esas relaciones bioculturales en el día a día de las comunidades actuales. Y teníamos además la comprensión de las artesanías como un recurso biocultural. Entonces, como equipos de trabajo, teníamos el reto de vincular esto de una manera orgánica y que tuviera sentido y arraigo para las comunidades. Obviamente el equipo de trabajo estaba conformado con personas de la región de Songolica, excepto yo, que vivía ahí, pero no era parte de la cultura, digamos, ¿no? Entonces, construimos esta categoría transversal que para nosotros fue como una columna vertebral. Lo que pueden ver en pantalla es la concepción nahua de un ciclo anual y de los 3 momentos o periodos que los nahuas eh, ubican dentro de un año, que son Tonalco, que es el periodo de calor, Xopantla, el periodo de lluvia, y Tlaxesescan, que es el periodo de frío. Al centro pueden ver la dualidad que es central en la cosmovisión nahua, que es la dualidad entre el frío y el calor, el origen de la vida, y en la parte externa, en el marco, pueden ver elementos que nos ayudan a ubicar mejor en qué momento estamos. Pero lo que estamos viendo es como un marco vacío, es un marco de referencia que se llenó a través de hacer una, como lo que nos compartía Katy, una matriz de información y plasmamos después en una forma de arte, que son todos estos dibujos con las actividades que van ocurriendo dentro de ese ciclo. De modo que una vez que llevamos este calendario con maestros y estudiantes, pudimos tratar cualquier cantidad de temas, lo que teníamos proyectado en el taller y mucho más que eso. Todo en relación a las relaciones bioculturales y con un componente muy importante sobre la alimentación. A partir de esa experiencia que conocimos de manera intuitiva, porque antes de eso no sabíamos que existían calendarios, pues nos apasionó el tema muchísimo. Y precisamente el año pasado con PPI retomamos un proyecto para usar los calendarios y compartir esta herramienta con diferentes grupos, sectores, en torno a los sistemas alimentarios locales. El equipo de trabajo somos Itlali López, Miguel Vega y Belinda Contreras. Y tuvimos 4 zonas principales de trabajo. Jalapa, Veracruz, en donde hay zona de bosque, es una zona de bosque mesófilo y con un contexto urbano fundamentalmente. El más importante, que es la Sierra de Songolica, en donde hacia su zona fría predomina el bosque de pino-encino y el bosque mesófilo de montaña, y es habitado por comunidades nahuas. La zona lacustre del lago de Pátzcuaro en Michoacán, que es un ecosistema habitado por personas de origen purépecha y en donde trabajamos con pescadores. Y la región de Wirikuta en el altiplano potosino, en el estado de San Luis Potosí, en donde predomina el matorral xerófilo y es un área protegida y habitada por comunidades campesinas. ¿Cómo planteamos entender los calendarios como una metodología de trabajo? Primero, queremos que las comunidades se conviertan en contextos pedagógicos y profundizamos. Bueno, eh, fuimos durante muchos años utilizando la herramienta, pero nos dimos cuenta de la necesidad, importancia y urgencia de analizar lo que estaba pasando. Entonces, por eso volteamos a ver qué alcances tenía la herramienta en términos de su diseño, de su uso y algo que es muy importante para nosotros, su potencial pedagógico y comunitario. Entendimos los calendarios como una matriz de datos y visibilizamos la reflexión y el análisis colectivo que se puede gestar a partir de ellos. De modo que trabajamos con procesos de producción familiar, como calendarios textiles, pesqueros y carboneros. Trabajamos con grupos que están insertos en un programa de gobierno en México. Trabajamos con diferentes instituciones educativas, desde primaria, secundaria, preparatoria y universidad. Pudimos hacer 13 talleres, un intercambio, involucrando a más de 150 personas y derivando de ahí más de 40 calendarios. Aquí podemos ver algunas imágenes del trabajo con grupos organizados, con escuelas, con supervisores académicos de la Secretaría de Educación en México, con alumnos de nivel preparatoria y universidad, fundamentalmente con el Instituto Tecnológico Superior de Songolica, con diferentes grupos, y con una colega que espero que esté hoy aquí, con Claudia, de la Universidad Veracruzana Intercultural. Entre estas 2 universidades realizamos un intercambio y lo que están viendo en pantalla son algunos calendarios gestados desde los intereses propios de los estudiantes. Además de eso, existe un espacio de la Universidad Veracruzana, particularmente del Citro, que se llama Agrobosque Universitario. Tiene espacios con diferente vocación, pero 2 de esos espacios son una milpa con fines productivos, de conservación y educativos, y un cafetal con los mismos objetivos. En torno a esos 2 espacios y a partir del conocimiento campesino, realizamos estos calendarios. Realizamos también el calendario textil con las artesanas de Tlaquilpa que pueden ver en la pantalla, donde al centro se pone también la relevancia de la cosmovisión de las mujeres, las especies de borregos, los colores de su lana, las especies tintóreas, o sea, es decir, de plantas que usan para teñir la lana, los colores que se obtienen y en el marco exterior los puntos o momentos de referencia. Del lado izquierdo está una tabla que acompaña el calendario con los nombres de las especies. Y hay una experiencia que estamos impulsando y que es visibilizar que incluso en las zonas desérticas de México también existen fuentes y sistemas tradicionales de alimentación. Pueden ver aquí una infografía que al ser puesta en contacto con otras personas, pues está tomando forma de un calendario, lo cual nos permite establecer relaciones que no teníamos previamente. Después de todas estas experiencias que hemos recorrido de manera muy rápida, les puedo decir que lo importante para nosotros al construir un calendario, primero es entender las cosas de manera cíclica. Y como me han enseñado las comunidades indígenas, no es solo un círculo, porque cuando empieza un ciclo y llegas al fin de ese ciclo, es decir, pensemos en un año, por ejemplo, no eres la misma persona que al inicio. De modo que no son círculos, sino es una espiral. Entonces, de ese entendimiento partimos. Después al centro se coloca lo que es vital en la cosmovisión, en los intereses, en las necesidades de las personas. En el nivel que sigue ponemos las estaciones que el clima nos ofrece y a partir de ahí ponemos elementos particulares y abrimos los espacios a las dimensiones territoriales. Lo que están viendo aquí es el marco del calendario pesquero. Podemos ver la dualidad en la cosmovisión purépecha que es entre lo bueno y lo malo y el origen de la vida. Podemos ver también el primer nivel que es lo que ocurre dentro del agua, el segundo nivel es lo que ocurre fuera del agua y que es movido por Tata Juriati, es decir, el viento, y el último nivel es lo que ocurre fuera del planeta, es decir, los astros, y que influyen con gran potencial en la actividad pesquera. ¿Qué hemos aprendido en estos años de trabajar con materiales? Primero, y como nos lo ilustraron maravillosamente Katy y Mari, es que permite vincular o entender procesos y relaciones y nos acerca a la relación sociedad-naturaleza. Nos permite pensar de una manera compleja, pero en una práctica muy sencilla y muy aterrizada. Nos permite pensar desde una visión sistémica e integrar comunidades epistémicas y nos ayuda a que las dinámicas educativas estén vinculadas a los territorios. En su dinámica nos permite construir desde lo que cada persona sabe y lograr estos ideales educativos del aprendizaje situado y el aprendizaje significativo, en el que las comunidades se vuelven per se espacios pedagógicos. Nos acerca a las realidades socioambientales, nos permite entender los aprendizajes como procesos sociales y fomentar el diálogo, la participación, la socialización, la convivencia, fomenta el encuentro, la oralidad, el movimiento, el arte, establecer códigos comunes y nos permite entender que las diferencias entre las personas o entre nuestros orígenes o culturas son un soporte pedagógico. Y finalmente, como herramienta didáctica, como pudieron verlo, se aplica a cualquier contexto, temática o grupo. Se puede utilizar cualquier tipo de materiales, no requiere una interpretación experta y es inclusivo con las personas que no saben leer y escribir. Soporta el paso del tiempo y la descontextualización, nos permite vencer la barrera de los idiomas, movernos en el espacio y el tiempo de manera abstracta, es un medio de expresión, creatividad y arte, y finalmente nos permite un ejercicio lúdico, es decir, nos permite que el goce sea posible. Y para nosotros eso es muy importante. Quien esté interesado o interesada en profundizar en componentes educativos, publicamos un artículo que pueden ver en esta revista Diálogos sobre Educación. Y de mi parte es todo, muchas gracias, pero quedo aquí para poder dialogar con ustedes. Gracias.
We are going to open up our Q&A session, our discussion. How do you think calendarios would work in places where people are more disconnected from nature? Do you have advice on what approaches might work best with calendars to connect and educate people about nature in these kind of communities?
In a place and an overall culture that is very disconnected from nature. And that was one of the reasons why we were doing this Calendario project, is to help ourselves to connect with nature and also to encourage other people to do it. I became aware that even though I've lived in this area for a long period of time, I didn't really know even the names of many of the birds. So I became curious to learn, to notice that the birds arrive from their migration in a certain order. And as part of my learning, I every week I drew on a piece of paper a particular bird that I was told you could see in that week. And I photocopied it and put it all over town with a sign that said Bird of the Week.
Another thing that's, I think, very indigenous about plants, knowing plants and animals, is that they have a lot to teach us, that there are teachers. So I feel like Calendaria also highlights that aspect, that sometimes these plants and animals are helping us, they're telling us things. So it really has become embedded in my understanding of what I'm hearing and seeing, that the linkages. Yeah.
Incluso en una ciudad, no todas las personas están igual de desconectadas. Hay personas más cercanas y eso es el carácter social que decimos del calendario. O sea, es muy importante que conectes primero a las personas, porque entonces quizá una persona mayor puede enseñar mucho a una persona más joven. Y a partir de esas relaciones entre las personas, reconectas con el entorno natural, digamos.
All right, thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon for our next webinar. We'll keep you posted on the next one in a couple of months.